Welcome back. Gail Zocco-Kirk. A couple things for, especially when it comes to the 411 and the 412, when it comes to the fares. I mean, I know that the agreement with the state for the 412 is you must charge fares. The 411 came with no strings attached, no match, no anything. So I'm not sure how we can say that the state's not worried about the ridership, because the state took action and made that route possible for us. When it comes to the meetings, I've had a lot of feedback from some people that couldn't make the meetings, saying that the times and locations were off. It just wasn't as accessible type of thing. There was a limited amount of specific information only given to specific areas. Like, I don't understand how the South End didn't have meetings themselves, because it's not, South End people have to catch a bus up north in order to get out to those areas. So I believe that the entire island county is involved in this, you know, not just the North End people. That's just a way to get to Mount Vernon. I personally have cut back on my VA appointments out in Mount Vernon because it is such a hassle to get out there. And I know a lot of other people who don't go to their appointments and, you know, just pretty much give it up because it's so difficult to get out there. And that's just my personal thing. I know of a lot of other people. The 8% recovery rate that we're looking for, what are the numbers on that? And will that assist with that, maybe possibly a fourth run for the 412? You know, you talk about whether it's affordable or not with that $250,000 a year. Will that recovery rate help that at all for those routes? We have a lack of buses for a Gillick out there for the 412. So there might be some other bus options that we need to do for that. The internet bandwidth for the that they need out there, that's an issue in itself. I mean, I realize that Route Match has its own server because it deals with the cloud services. That's an issue I speak about often. I do agree. I'm not against fare collection. You know, for me, I haven't ridden the 412, so I can't say on that. But for the 411, I'm not against fares, but I am totally against fares with the current staff and the current lack of oversight over it, as I've stated before. That's all I have.
Thank you. Any other comments? Yes, ma'am.
Yes, Patty O'Carver. What about including minors in on the discounted fare rate? And what do we do if someone needs to take a bus somewhere and frankly they just don't have the money? Are they going to be stuck, or is there anything that could solve that problem?
We're not answering questions individually. We'll take your comments and then we'll come back to the board to respond to your question.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else, Patty?
Thank you.
Jim Cabinets, Island Transit.
Jim?
We used to have a Route 4 and a Route 411 going out that direction towards March's Point. We have a fair amount of people that just go to Northgate. They don't go all the way to March's Point. Are they going to still have to pay a $2 fee or some kind of, you know, or is it going to be different for someone who just goes somewhere still on our island? We do have a fair amount of people that go from Oak Harbor to just Northgate, or Northgate to Oak Harbor. And I was just kind of curious. The Route 4, that's all it did was go up towards Northgate, passed up to Troxel, and around there just came back. So I'm sure you don't really want to add another shorter route. So I was just kind of curious.
Yeah, that was discussed, and we'll respond to that question. That's been part of our conversation about how to split that up.
Yeah,
getting on or getting off.
One side of the bus and people aren't on this.
Any other, thanks, Jim. Any other comments, questions from anybody? Going once, going twice, public comment period. It's closed. So I'll go back to the board. We want to address some of these questions. Starting with Rick Hanover.
Just one for Jim, that was already addressed, and if people going from Whidbey to March Point would pay off, getting off at March Point. So that would address that. So if you're just doing on Island Trout, it would not be paying for it. Same thing going back to Camino from Mount Vernon, you would pay getting on in Mount Vernon and then just get off wherever you're going. So if you get picked up, say at Terry's Corner, on that bus as it's coming back on Camino, you would put the riding for free. So that's taken. It's only for people that are going out of county or from out of county into county. The 4 runs for success, I agree wholeheartedly with that, Steve. I think that's a must, and that's going to take the board consideration to find the monies that would cost, because that's going to take us putting some skin in the game. And for Gail, your question about the 411 and that the state doesn't require or didn't write it into the grant any strings attached about charging a fare on the 411. No, they did not. However, in discussions that I've had with our state senators and our state legislators, we're highly encouraged to charge a fare in order to have a little leverage when it comes to going for future subsidies. So they're not saying that we have to, but highly encouraged. This terminology that can't be ignored.
Is that all, Rick?
Yep.
Okay, Jill?
I understand the concerns about the desire for four runs on the 412, and I think that is just understanding our numbers better and knowing what we could leverage to do that. I understand the concerns about inter-island connectivity as well. I think the number of people who are using the bus to commute between Whidbey and Camino is probably low, just because of the time it takes. And so I don't want to say that that's not a factor in my decision, but it's somewhat not a factor in my decision because I think that that's more of a story we tell ourselves than a reality of usage. In terms of the public process that we use to go about making this decision, you know, these are commuter routes primarily serving a certain segment of the population, and so I mean I trusted the staff to make recommendations on where we would have those public meetings, and if there was a high population of people from Central or South Whidbey that were commuting off island up north, we would know that. What I've seen is a high propensity of people who commute from Central and South Whidbey going south, and so any connector route that related to those would seem to serve that population better. I don't have any concerns about the ethics of the staff involved that we have right now as it relates to fare collection. I think I'm hoping that that was a misstatement because I certainly don't assume that our staff steals, and I think they're quite capable of counting $2 at a time. In fact, 2 times 2 was some of the quickest math there was. So I think we're fine there. Patty had the questions that I think are hardest to answer right now about what if someone can't pay. And I think that we're going to need a policy around that that's developed before any type of implementation. And I think, you know, my thought is that we're going to need to work with our drivers a little bit on some discretion. If we have somebody out there in the rain who cannot pay and they need a classification of rider that we're trying to serve, I don't know what we would do about that. I mean, I'm not going to turn away somebody. I don't know. So I think we need a policy discussion around that, and I think it was a very good point. And then she also brought up something that I think we need to discuss further too, which is we don't have any demographic information associated with the ridership. So when we have conversations about students or veterans or people with disabilities or seniors, we've commuted, or any fare reduction in those areas that's about 90% of our ridership. And so at what point are you just not charging the fare? So what I'm hearing so far from this board is that we're committed at $2 no matter who you are. The public feedback I've heard is that there's an expectation of reduced fares for certain populations. And looking at these fare recovery numbers, I don't know how we would do that. We don't have the flexibility in our recovery rates to offer a discount to anyone. So if that's a desire of this board, I think we need to own that early in this process because it will dramatically change our numbers. That's all I have.
Bruce?
The thing about the youth and the fares for reduced fares, I think that's something we've talked about some, but not much. I think it needs a lot more discussion to make sure we're doing the right thing for all the people. And as far as letting people get on the bus for free, which has also been discussed, and, just by letting them get on, not making a big thing out of it, I don't know how that would work. Because all of a sudden nobody would have any money.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't be riding the bus at all. So something that we have to look at that really seriously. As far as the runs on 412, that affects my end of the island. And I agree with everybody that 4 runs a day is pretty much a requirement to make that work. And there's a whole lot of people that go off the south end of the island to work. Most of the south end works for Bowen. Or goes into Seattle. They have, you have buses going clear over to UW. Transit buses go clear over there for people who work there. And drop them off, pick them back up at night, every day. So
That's not the 412 though, the 412.
no, it's not 412, but it's the or whatever you call those, transit buses. Not buses, but the vans. And it works. I mean, they pay a fare and it works. But the south end would be dramatically affected with 412. For people getting off the south end, going into Everett, into Bowling, into wherever they're going.
But the 412 is only a route between Camino and Everett.
Doesn't come off the south end? No.
So our routes for the south end stop at the ferry, and we don't have any
All right.
other than van pools.
Okay, that's it.
Thank you, Bruce. Lance, your moment. You get the last bite of the apple.
Okay. 2 things to respond to Patty. I was under the assumption that we would be implementing reduced fares for youth, elderly, disabled, etc., veterans and whatnot. I think that's something that we should do. A lot of people just simply can't afford. Elderly and disabled, for example, and the young children, school children, can't afford these full fares, and for whatever reason they're riding, they can't afford it. The other thing is on the non-payment of fares. Every single transit system, whether small or huge, has the frequent flyers. Never have any money. Whether it's a fare box or a pass or an invalid transfer. 36 years I drove a bus. 13 back east, the rest out here, and then 9 years as president of the union. I've seen it all. And after a while, the drivers start to see the frequent flyers. And so, it's a hard thing to get used to. You start to say, oh man, I saw you last week and you didn't have any money. So listen, I gotta tell you, you gotta have something. You gotta have something. And we appreciate the full fare. And it reaches a point where the driver may have to say, listen, this is a written warning. I've spoken to you 2 or 3 times. But that's part of this business. And the liability that comes on a transit agency for saying, aside from any violence that may occur where the person is banned from riding, aside from that, the liability to leave someone that needs a ride, especially in a rural area. Suppose they started walking and got hit by a car, and somebody says, what the hell was he walking for in the bus? Well, the bus passed him by because he didn't have any fare, or she, or the job, or whatever. You can't encourage that. It's just part of doing business, and we'll adjust to it. The drivers will. We'll speak to the drivers about how to do it, but no, we will. And it's hard for some to get used to. But they'll all get on board, and it will be handled professionally. The people that have the money will always pay. Those that don't will come around somehow, some way. I used to say, when we had the old fare boxes, my man, put something in there for God's sakes. You can't just walk by. People see that and think, maybe I can just do that. Most don't. But they come around. And the others that don't, won't. And it's part of business. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. So, actually, I can ask my.
Oh, that's right. You do.
I was hoping you forgot.
I'm looking at the survey numbers that you have here. Most of the people, according to the survey, most of the people using the system are going to work. Okay? Most of the people going to work, substantially most of the people going to work, can afford to pay something. I'm going to make that something. The reason they're going to work because they're getting paid. And it's going to be a trade-off between whether they're going to drive or whether they're going to take public transit, whether it's going to be convenient or inconvenient. And that becomes a personal decision. Some of the other transit systems that I've just asked questions on, not doing a formal survey on it. For students who have an ID card, a valid ID card, whether they're going to a university or whether they're going to the high school or to whatever school that has a student ID, the school issues them that ID because they are a student in good standing. That is their pass to get on board. That is something that I understand that the county does. I think Wenatchee does that. They ride if they have a valid student card, whatever pass they're issued. And then it's my understanding that people who have disabilities or SSI ID cards also use that as the pass, as the policy that's adopted by the transit districts. So it doesn't have to become that complicated now. As far as veterans go, as far as seniors, this is going to be dangerous for me to say this. I'm a senior, I'm a veteran, but I can afford to pay. And most people who are seniors, veterans, going to work can afford to pay also. So how do you distinguish between somebody just because they're a veteran? Sorry about that, Skipper. You have to pay. You're not old enough. Okay. But the issue about just because you're a veteran, that you don't pay, that's a big segment of our population because we're a military community, and we have a lot of veterans here as well as active duty. There are disability programs that also have ID plans. Veterans disability thing, I think Gail could probably respond to this. The Skipper can respond to this. You have ID cards for those particular programs that you qualify for.
No, not for the ID card, because I'm 100% disabled. Now, it doesn't say that on my ID card, but what I did when I went to Skagit and gave them, I had to bring them my front page to my letter that says you're 100%, and that's what they did to give me that.
We may be able to, in fact, let me go one other step before we get deep into this one. This decision is a work in progress. It's a process in itself. The state legislature, our legislators are looking at us to upgrade our operation in that we, number one, are financially stable here. Number two, we're charging a fare, and we're going to have a tough time asking for money or asking for the support of the legislature if we're not helping ourselves. That's a message that was given to me personally, and I think even as a group, made loud and clear. Y'all in Island Transit have to help yourself too. And so it's a work in progress, and we can only measure that after we take the bold step that this is the framework that we're going to do today, not necessarily speaking of 15th. This is the policy that we're going to adopt. And it may be tweaked down the road. But we have to get started at some point. That's all I have to say. Any other comments?
I have questions for staff questions.
Okay.
In terms of our decision-making process, if we're going to consider fair exemptions, I think we need to do that up front to look at the data analysis. So what I'm looking at is how we're gonna stage these conversations to make the best decision. Do we just decide we're gonna charge a fare and then go back and figure out these other aspects? Because that seems like a concerning way to go about it. So, I mean, if we're talking about discounts to any population of riderships, we need to know the impact of that ridership and what the cost impact would be on our fare recovery. The same is true about the 412 decision. If we're doing 4 routes instead of 3, we need to know the cost impact of that up front before we make our final decision on where we're charging fares and how many routes we're gonna have. And then I would assume we would make our decision and then go into the development of the policy after that in terms of how we handle non-payment, and we would do the policy development after we make the final decision on fares. I guess what I'm looking for is that how this information is going to come to us in order that we can make the best possible decision. I mean, I've heard loud and clear also from the state that our job is to help ourselves before they continue to keep helping us. But I have to believe that they're not asking us to lose money in this process. And so what I want to make sure is that we have the very best financial analysis in place so that we don't go in there to prove a point to them and then lose money in the process, because we're not, again, at a financial point where we can do that. I know it's not going to be perfect intellectually, but every part of me that wants to make the decision wants the information to be perfect. Safer that way. So I kind of want to know that decision-making matrix and the series of decisions we need to make in order to get the best financial information to make the final call.
Okay. Rick, you have something on your mind?
Yeah, well, I just want to say, and it piggybacks on what Jill says, because I'm looking at, for example, we're looking at a fare recovery of 7.74%, say on the 412, with a $2 charge for everybody. But if we're going to go and say, okay, well, 65 and over, you ride free. And if that 65 and over is 30% of our ridership, now we've got 30% less recovery rate. So I think you need to work those numbers out and see what it is as opposed, and I know I've worked the numbers. I'm sorry I didn't bring copies, but this was a work in progress over the weekend of what it would be to add a 4th run. And I think if we added a 4th run, that would actually, the ridership would probably increase significantly because people would know they have that option. So I don't think I think we cut down on that 30% loss that we're anticipating from what our historical numbers were. Anyway, if staff could work all those numbers out, because I know this is scheduled to go to vote on the 28th, correct? Have all those numbers and options.
We actually, the agenda is possible action regarding the fare system today.
Yeah, possible. I thought we were scheduled for the 28th, but if you want to do it today, I'd be all more than willing to do that. But I hear Jill saying she wants firmer numbers.
Then we should make a motion to tell staff exactly what we want.
I mean, I could be easy. If we want to do $2 and have an exempt nobody, right? And have the 3 routes and look at these numbers, then our decision's made because these all show that they'll make it. But the public feedback we've heard is that there's been some requests for discounts. So we need to make a decision if we're going to have discounts or not. And I think the better way for us to make that decision as a board is to see what the financial impact would be. Otherwise, we can just decide now that you get on a bus, you pay $2.
Well, tell Paul exactly what you want.
I want to know the impact of each demographic group that we're considering giving a reduced fare to, what that impact would be on our recovery rate per demographic group.
When you define demographics, are you talking about age, disability, and
Yeah.
classification?
So I have age, seniors, students, developmental or physical disabilities, veterans. If Jackie were here, she would say income. And when I say students, by the way, I'm talking about college. I don't know what everybody else is talking about, but we pay for school buses, and I'm
Yeah,
not
not-
subsidizing two systems. So unless there's a disagreement on that, I'm talking
No
about college
disagreement
age
here.
students, because we're not paying for two transit systems to get kids to their publicly funded schools. That's way too much publicly funded transportation. So
What about alternative schools? We have a number of
That,
them in the south.
people, if they're going to, as a matter of fact, I have a problem with college. If you can afford tuition to college, you can afford a bus fare.
So, I mean, I'm saying students are college age. So if you're in a public school system, you have transportation provided under that public school system by law. So they have a free option.
Mhm.
If they want to pay, they can pay. So I was talking students, unless there's disagreement on college age students, unless there's disagreement on that.
Okay,
Those are the
what
only
you were
ones.
doing is giving Paul
Yeah.
your description of the demographics, so he can do an analysis, even find out if we can even come up with that information in the time that you want.
So are we asking, we want to know definitively what our demographics are of the riders on their buses?
Well, if
As a starting point?
I think if this board were to make a decision to say we're gonna get a reduced fare to any of these populations, wouldn't you think we would need to know the financial ramification of that decision?
I think it's a good idea. It's just that with the time that we have to do a survey of all our riders to see which category they fall into, I think it's going to take a little time.
We don't capture, Paul's point, we capture some of that in the rider counts. The operators will classify some in certain categories, but I think it's physical disability, we don't capture that. Veterans, we don't capture that. College students, we don't currently capture that. So for Paul to estimate these numbers, we don't have that demographic information on our current ridership. So that's where I think he's.
You know, with that information, I can see Paul making a precise calculation from a random point. He's not gonna have very good information.
Well, so then I think that we can't have a conversation about giving population discounts. I mean, that's what I'm trying to get to, is we can't make a good decision.
On reduced fares.
On reduced fares, so then you're going to a non-reduced fare for everybody.
That's the nice thing about the connector routes, is we're not required to have discounted or free fares.
Then, right now, you have the opportunity to make the motion of what you're proposing, anybody. And if you get a second, we vote on it, and it either goes up or down. So, tell us what you want.
If you're gonna go ahead and make a motion, then I'll speak on the motion. I don't want to influence anybody prior to making a motion.
Okay?
The other thing you can do is.
Okay, on the subject of, do you want to take them separately, the 411 and the 412? I think they need to be separate. Okay, right, at this moment, I'll make a motion that we reinstate the 412 with 4 runs per day at a $2 charge per ride.
Is there a second?
I'll second for discussion.
Okay, the motion's been made by Mr. Hanold, seconded by Ms. Johnson. And the motion is to have a fare, $2 for everybody on the 412, which would include 4 runs each day. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay. And no reduced fares. Okay, Lance?
I think that motion has 2 parts to it. I don't think it should be 2 parts. If you're gonna, I don't have any objection to the 4.
Okay, let me interrupt you for a second. you don't agree with the motion, you can make an amendment to that motion and see where your discussion goes.
Lance can't.
Except
Lance
I-
can.
Except that
He can make an amendment to it.
No, he can't, he's an ex-officio member.
So he has to.
Oh, yeah, I'm
just
sorry,
follow.
you're right, you're right. I stand corrected on that. And Lance is not.
State has
voting
allowed
member.
me to be discriminated against.
That's right.
Yeah, the state has allowed you to be here.
Only for beauty, only for beauty, Lance.
Well, maybe you could get somebody else to make that
Yeah.
motion on your behalf.
I hope.
Go ahead, you can speak to that. You can speak to what you're going to say.
Well, I think it's two parts, and I think, as I said, on one part I have no objection, on the second part I have a huge objection. So I was hoping
What is your
that-
objection? What are the two parts?
Well, the two parts is the four runs on the 412, right? 412? Yeah. And the other part is the no reduction in fare. I mean, to me, there's two separate issues here. I want to agree with one, or perhaps another board member would agree to part of it, but not the entire, and then would vote, perhaps it's unfair. There's two separate sections to this one.
Which one do you like and which one don't you like, Lance?
I like the 4 round trips, absolutely, but I don't like, I think, the fare reductions needs further discussion. Because I always understood that there would be. Now, if we're going to eliminate veterans, I understand that. I don't have a problem. I'm a veteran. I don't have a problem with that. But the other categories, I really do have a concern about. I'd like to see that motion split into two separate motions. She's looking at me with a smile. Only because we're new best friends, Jill and I. So that's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? Pardon?
I don't see it as two motions.
I'm in favor of one part and not the other, but maybe opposite of Lance. But I mean, my vote right now is gonna be no because of the financial ramifications of the 4 routes not being understood. So, I'm not against 4 routes. I just wanna make sure I remember what it costs us.
Anything else?
No, but I'm gonna vote no.
Okay. Now, for my comments on this, if we start with the 3 routes, let's say we have $2, that's it. We start with 3 routes. And as we are moving through our recovery process, we're able to realign, readjust other routes and improve our financial position. Perhaps adding the 4th route would be one of our top priorities, if it made sense to do that. It would give us some time to go into that discussion and that analysis. I don't know that 3 routes is automatically, I mean, I don't have the data that says 3 routes is an automatic killer for that process. I do not know that.
Right, but that's the concern about making the decision. We don't have the data on the fares. We don't have the data on the 3 routes versus 4 in terms of impact on ridership. We don't have the data. But do you
Okay.
want to vote? I mean,
Okay,
well, what I want to do is be clear that we're making a decision without information.
then amend the motion.
I wasn't the motion maker.
You can amend it, you can do a friendly amendment to that motion. Yeah, it can be a hostile.
Let's just vote it down and start over.
All right, call for the question.
Or withdraw it, and the second, have the second withdraw.
It's on the table, we won't withdraw it. So, call for the question.
Yep.
Okay, call for the question. All of those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Those opposed?
Aye.
Aye. The nays have it, so that motion fails. Does anybody want to make a,
I would like to make a motion that we postpone our decision-making on all routes and the possibility of additional routes until our next meeting.
28.
March 28th, and request that staff bring back the requested
motion, and I'll try to repeat the motion here, for us to postpone the decision on the fares for the 411, WMC, and the 412 until March 28th, until the staff brings us, now you say data, that's pretty general.
The cost of the 412.
Cost of the 412
With
specifically.
4 routes.
With 4 routes,
And how we would pay for that.
and how we'd pay for that.
And an estimated projection of discounts, how the discounts would affect the fare collection recovery rate.
For just the 412?
Do we have,
All
do we have a second on that yet?
Well, you know, we do, we're kind of stepping out of.
I was gonna say, let's get a second on it
Procedure, yeah.
Well,
then.
Bruce
I
seconded
did.
it.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Okay.
And now Rick's making me clarify all the conversation that we just had. Again.
May I ask for
Okay,
a
so-
clarification? Do we need a motion? Or
We
you just
really-
do a sign?
No, we're just gonna table it.
We really don't, but I just wanted to move us along.
Yeah.
Without-
I want to be specific with what we want from the staff to do, so we can move along and stop kicking the can down the road.
Okay, you good? Can I-
Wait a minute, we have a motion on the table, we're either gonna,
I know, it's open for discussion now, correct? There's a motion on the table. Clarify this, okay, because I've got the numbers here in front of me. Would like the numbers of what it costs for the 411, or for the 412 with 3 runs per day, projected ridership, and break it down to the demographics, because we've got graphs here that are showing that 75% of the people are willing to pay $2 a way, blah, blah, blah. Break it down into numbers, okay? How many are going to work? Because people are going to work, and it's a different demographic using the 412 than the 411.
That's not what I was asking.
I know, well, no, you want the numbers of what it's gonna cost, right?
I don't care if they're commuters, I care who they are.
That's part of demographics, where they're going. If they're old and going to work, they can afford to pay a fare.
But it doesn't matter what they want.
Okay. Anyway, I've got a breakdown here, and then figure it out also, I would like you to show it, just like I've got in this graph that or this paperwork that I took away. If we were to not charge the 411, if we weren't to do fares on that now, what we could save by doing so, which I showed to be $26,538 a year. Okay, what we would save that could be transferred over to the $88,000 it would cost to do an extra run on the 412. And how much we would have to take out of wherever we get it from to make up for that. Does that make sense? So show the options of having the 412 with a fare and no fare on 411.
well,
And the 412 with a fare and a fare on 411.
we gotta reel this thing in. We've got a motion on the table here, we're either gonna vote the motion down and then.
Well, the motion is to table it until the 28th.
Okay.
Okay.
That wasn't the complete motion, but.
With,
to
she
clarify-
asked for with information.
No,
I'm
hold
adding
on,
the
hold on.
information I'd like to have as well.
Rick, hold on, I have the floor right now. Just bear with me. I want to get us off this, the procedure thing, and then we can give
Okay, let's
staff
take
the
a vote.
direction about what we want. So the motion right now is Jill has asked for additional data regarding the 412, and a second by Mr. Allen. And
I was asking for additional information for all of the routes, the financial implications of adding the 4th route to the 412, a recommendation of where that money would come from, and then the demographic impact for user groups, the best we can guess, on what a fare reduction would be, and the impacts that would have on our recovery rates for each of the routes that we're considering.
okay, and that's very similar to what I heard Mr. Handel say too. So, does that make sense to you,
Yep.
Paul?
Yeah.
And, okay, and you have that, Megan?
Well, I have it here,
Okay,
and so I think I'm gonna have to listen to.
patch it together when you
Yeah.
actually do this. Okay, any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Now, is there anything else you wanted to add that doesn't have to be through a motion right now? We gotta move this.
Todd, you need help? call me, we'll set up a meeting, okay? You know what I'm looking for. We'll set up a meeting, and I'll help you.
Do
Okay.
we know the cost of the reduced fare? What that would be?
Oh, come on. you
Come on,
those
just
kind
make,
of
just,
facts?
you're on, just call it free,
Free?
free.
All right, we're moving on to item number 2. Item number 2 is a discussion with possible action regarding the possible presentation of the route match. Gotta look at the right line here. The route match proposal for the STP R211 award and possible action. This is the route match. And our guest, Mr. Coogan?
Tom, Coogan,
Tom?
yes.
Yeah. All right, if you'd like to come up here and join us, Sean over here. Yes.
So they're gonna set that up, and I'll just give a brief overview of what they're doing. So this is the introduction for Route Match. And Route Match is the dispatching software that we currently use today. We were awarded a grant through Skagit Island RTPO in 2011. This is a fleet management software, and what we were awarded this for was to upgrade our existing Route Match software. So this is just the next level. And what I guess a good example would be if you had a car and you were going to change an engine at some point, but you bought the car with that engine, and at some point you knew when you put the other engine in, you were going to have better gas mileage, you were going to have increased efficiencies. And so that's what we're talking about right now as far as our scheduling software. We have done a lot of research on this. I think that Island Transit will benefit from lower costs by using the software, increased efficiency in our scheduling for paratransit. We'll be able to decrease our call volumes. So we're talking anywhere from between 4 and 6 o'clock in the afternoon. We're talking about 780 calls a month. And with this software, we're going to be able to reduce that by about 500 to 600 calls. So you're talking about we'll still be fielding 180 calls that may not necessarily deal with the scheduling, but that's a big decrease for a 2-person department that's doing that right now. What's significant with that is when you see buses in particular areas, it may have been a cancel or something like that. We don't have the ability the schedule's preset the day before. So you come in today and 3 people have canceled overnight. It leaves us in a situation where, you say, well, why don't you just move those from another bus? Well, when you move that from another bus, then what is that bus doing? Because their schedule is preset as well. So this is something that'll help with that by being able to schedule real time or shorter blocks and move things around same day. So what it'll consist of is a full tablet conversion. So it'll change out the Rangers that we're using right now. Ranger is a piece of equipment that the operator records all their paratransit manifest on, and they're able to arrive and depart passengers or mark them as no-show, and then it calculates all the information for us. What's significant about that is the Rangers, they and Tom will be able to speak a little bit more about it, but they sold the company from when we first had them. And so, to make a long story short, they're really expensive to repair. So when we send them in, it takes anywhere from 2 to 3 months to get one back. We only have 2 spares right now for our whole entire fleet. We're down to 2 spares. And once those are gone, we'll have to make a decision on if we're buying tablets, individually to run off the license that we're currently running off of. Those are just some of the decisions that we'll have to make. And this software will consist of 3 different parts. The Route Match Fixed, which is basically the engine. the notification module, which will reduce the call volumes. And when I say that, what it does is call the client the day of and lets them know, or the day before and lets them know, you know, you have an appointment at 4 o'clock tomorrow and you can cancel that at that time if you'd like, or accept it. Right now, we're currently fielding every one of those. They know at 4 o'clock the floodgates open, and so they're picking up phones, giving them their times. And this will allow us to get away from that, and then we'll be able to keep eyes on the schedule to do more adjustments with the schedule. And then there's the Route Shout, which is the smartphone app we talked about, which will, they'll get into more of that, which will allow you to know when your bus is coming, just by pulling up your app on the smartphone. And most agencies have this. We're kind of behind the curve on this. So with that, I will turn it over. Oh, Ken?
Maybe have Paul and Ken have some input on this right now too.
Yeah, I'd like to point out that